Did I really think that carrying a laptop on the PCT was a good idea? Spoiler alert, I didn't, but today we're talking gear regrets, what I sent home, why I made these mistakes, and how you can avoid them on your Thru-Hike. Hey y'all, Jeffrey here. I just finished my Pacific Crest Trail Thru-Hike and I learned a lot about gear, mostly what not to bring. In this video, I'm gonna break down the items that I ended up shipping home, why I made those decisions, and the lessons that you can learn to help you avoid making the same mistake. You can check out my full list of gear links in the video description. It has everything I used on the trail and everything I loved, everything I didn't love, but anything that I used, it's there, so you can find the links. Stay until the end for my top 3 tips on how to avoid your own gear regrets, because you're inevitably going to have them, but maybe we can avoid some of them. Okay, item number 1 that I sent home, this is the Nashville Pack Bridge Pack. It, I believe, is around 23 liters. And the reason I sent it home was, for obvious reasons, it was way too small. It almost worked. I was able to make it work if I was going to be out for less than 4 or 5 days. But for those longer stretches, there was just no way it was going to work. And the reason that I didn't know that in advance is because I know better, but I did not try packing all my gear until like a handful of hours before I left for the airport. I know better. I just have used so much of this gear that I got too confident. I ended up replacing it with the Cutaway 30 from Nashville Pack. It is the larger size of the exact same pack, almost the exact same pack. The bridge, they actually don't make the bridge anymore, but there's a version of the Cutaway that's 20 liters that's pretty much this pack, very, very similar to this pack. I made other videos about this pack, why I chose it, what I love about it. So you can check that out if you want to know more details about the packs that I used. But I was super happy with all of them. I will stick with Nashville Pack. This one's DCF. The second one I used is DCF. And then near the end of the trail, they were starting to make packs with a Lula, a brand new, I don't know about brand new, but it's newish to the outdoor world fabric called a Lula. And so I ended up trying a 3rd pack as well. But always test your full pack setup before you hit the trail. I know that and still didn't follow it. But if you're thinking that you know that and don't need to follow it, you're wrong. It's not fun to be ordering a new pack on the way to the airport. Next up is my Enlightened Equipment Torrid Puffy. Now I flippin' love this thing. It's great. I adore this thing. It's so warm. It's synthetic insulation, which is ideal. It was ideal for me because I was using a Enlightened Equipment quilt that was down, and it's always great to pair synthetic insulation gear with down gear because down doesn't perform when it's wet. Synthetic does. So anyway, this is synthetic because I wanted a synthetic layer in case all of my gear should happen to get wet. But I ended up sending it home because my Senchi and my Enlightened Equipment Copperfield, combining the 2 of these together, ended up providing me more than enough versatile warmth to be able to send the Torrid home. Now, if I had been, it wasn't that cold. That's the key here. If it had been colder, I would have needed the Torrid. I mean, these provide warmth, but they do not provide as much warmth as the Torrid. But the Senchi provides a lot of warmth. The Copperfield keeps the wind off, which also provides a lot of warmth. And then I could also wear these individually if I wanted. So that is why I sent my Enlightened Equipment Torrid home. It is an incredible puffy. If you're going with a puffy, I would go with that. However, I did end up sending it home. So if you think that you're not going to need as much warmth, think about an Enlightened Equipment Copperfield and Senchi situation. Mine was the Senchi Alpha 60, and then the Copperfield wind shirt is from Enlightened Equipment. Hello! Hey, if you are sitting there thinking, oh, I want to travel more, I want to go on more adventures, come with me. I host trips around the world. We've been hiking in Patagonia, we went looking for the Northern Lights in Iceland, trekking in Nepal, camping in Banff, Canada, in the Canadian Rockies. We do it all, and we have a real good time. Everyone's welcome, and all the details for any current trips, just click that little bubble up up in the top corner, or go to my website, jjb.life/travel. And we almost always make at least one group cringy TikTok. So come hang out with us. We're a real good time. Okay, next up is my laptop. And that was one of my dumber decisions. Now, I was not carrying it, to be clear. I was not carrying it in my pack. But what I was doing was mailing it in a bounce box to myself along the trail. I would pick it up. I picked it up in Idlewild so that I could work for a couple days. And then I put it in a bounce box and shipped it to another town a week or two down the trail. Now, I would avoid doing this at all costs if you don't have to. But I'm super lucky to get to call this my job, and the content that I was creating around my Thru-Hike was my job, and I had to work. It wasn't optional. The only reason I got to do the trail was because I could call it work. So I get it. Don't comment like, oh, why were you working on this? I didn't have a choice. It's how I'm so fortunate to get to do this for work, and I'm not complaining. So you don't complain. I had an amazing time. I was really good at disconnecting. It didn't dominate the trip. So don't come at me in the comments, please. I thought a laptop, but here's why I ended up sending it home. This is just big enough. I think it was by about 1 inch that it doesn't fit in any of the standard USPS boxes that are flat rate. It also doesn't fit in a lot of other size boxes, even custom boxes that you order. So I would have to order a huge box just to accommodate this. And it made no sense. I mean, it made sense because I needed something, but I ended up replacing it, which is still ridiculous to carry this unless you need it to work while you're on the trail. But I ended up snagging an iPad. And it was it's much lighter, but because it was so much smaller and more compact, I did end up carrying it with me on the trail. So, could I have survived without it? Yes, but editing video was so much easier with it. It was worth it, and I would do it again. Nobody else needs to carry it. It's excessive if you don't need to work or have some really legitimate reason for carrying it. But for me, it worked great. But nonetheless, my laptop went home. Okay, next up were the Brooks Ghost Crew socks. I made a vanity choice. I chose these because they were the cutest. They're what I wanted to wear. Brooks very generously supports my silly adventures, and I ended up going with a different Brooks sock that's meant for what I'm doing. This is one of their casual socks, one of their socks that's meant for road running. These were super cute, but I ended up switching to the Brooks High Point, which look nearly identical. They do have some design differences, but the biggest difference is they're meant for a thru-hike. They're meant for the trail. They're a merino blend. They have a different stitching situation. They're meant for tough trail conditions. So I would not choose these casual socks in the future, which are not meant for what I was using them for. Invest in good socks. It's worth it. There are also brands that have lifetime guarantees that if they get a hole in them, and they will get a hole in them, they will replace them. Brooks is not one of those. Brooks does not do that. But there are some really great sock brands that do. So I used, again, the Brooks 2-in-1 High Point. No, it's not called the 2-in-1. The Brooks High Point Crew sock is what it's called. This, I have extras left over because, again, they were not adequate for the trail. Next up, I sent my Z-Packs Ultiplex tent home. And the reason why, because I fell in love with cowboy camping. Who would have thought? I didn't know I was going to be a cowboy camper. Cowboy camping is sleeping without a tent. Camping without a tent, just going raw, right on the ground. Well, not raw, right on the ground. You use a Tyvek, ground sheet, other things. But I ended up sending the Ultiplex home. This is a great DCF tent. It is not freestanding. It requires one tent pole. It is the version of their solo backpacking tent for taller people. It has a little bit higher head clearance, and it's amazing. And I could have kept using it, but I also had a Z-Packs pocket tarp. They're really, really similar in design. The big difference is that the pocket tarp is a tarp. It doesn't visually look like a tarp. It looks like a tent. It's basically the top part of a tent. I also have the bathtub floor that attaches to it. But the big difference is it doesn't have any of the netting. It's not completely sealed off from the outside. So there's not bug protection. But we didn't really need it. Well, we'll get to that later. We didn't experience a lot of bugs. And the other thing is if you just endure until the sun goes down, the mosquitoes and bugs go away. But I ended up having my pocket tarp shipped to me in lieu of the Altiplex just because it saved a little bit of weight and space. Okay, next up, I shipped my Outdoor Research Echo hoodie, my sun hoodie, home. It performed brilliantly, not because I replaced it or because I didn't like it or because anything. This is one of my favorite pieces of gear on the trail. I lived in this. And I don't know what I washed it in, but it smells so good. Which is another perk. I guess I didn't think about that. This has been laundered and has been so gross and nasty. The fact that it smells that good is kind of bonkers. That's a huge perk that I hadn't thought of. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I shipped it home. Why did I ship it home? I shipped it home because I didn't think I needed it anymore. We got into the Sierras and I was like, you know what? I think I'm good. We're out of the desert. But I just didn't realize that Northern California and Oregon was going to be as hot, dry, and sunny as it was in places. We were still in like 100+ degree temperatures in Northern California. But it just wasn't worth it or convenient to have it shipped back to me. But I really wish I would have had it for those sections. So next time, there's not going to be a next time. But if there is, next time, I'll know. Last, but certainly not least, and slightly deceptive, is these 3 items. These are my Microspikes. These are the Microspikes from Black Diamond. They are pricey, but worth it. They are incredible. I've bought so many pair of the cheap ones off Amazon that the chains break, the spikes get bent over, and these did so well. And I wasn't even that great about avoiding walking on rocks and not snowy environments on them or in them. I would be very lazy about taking them on and off, and they're great. They're still in like new condition. I sent them home because I didn't need them anymore. But when I had them, they were great. I highly recommend. Next is my bear can. Obvious reasons. This is the Barricade. This size is the Weekender. I don't know if I could have had a bigger one on my pack, maybe. I don't know if the larger size would have fit. This one fit on my pack perfectly, but it was hard to fit the longer food carries in it. Anytime we had like 6-7 days, I would end up having to get a little bit of food like in my outside pocket of my bag. But otherwise, I loved this. Well, and I did not like it because of that. It wasn't its fault. That's the size that I chose. I should have chosen a different size. But I sent it home because I didn't need it. I didn't need it at times. One thing to know about your bear can is as long as you've got it sealed really well, you can actually put a label right on it. You don't have to put it in a box or anything. You can just ship it. This can be the shipping container. Hot tip. Next up is my ice axe. This is a camp. This is the Corsa Alpine, I think it's called. Yeah, the Corsa Alpine. This is a popular ice axe. There's others from camp and other brands that are great. This got shipped home. Well, so I had it shipped to, I didn't need it before Kennedy Meadows. You could possibly want or need an ice axe depending on your start date and the weather the winter before. You could want your ice axe for like the area above Idlewild and some other places. But I started late enough and we had a low enough snow year that wasn't necessary. So I had planned to order and get my ice axe at Kennedy Meadows South. And so that is exactly what I did. But once we got there, we were hearing from people who had left the week or two before that it wasn't necessary. So I ordered it, I had it shipped to Kennedy Meadows South, and then immediately shipped it home because we just didn't we didn't need it. There was nowhere that we needed it. There were a couple places that we needed these spikes and I didn't have them. It was fine, but I would have loved to have had them, but that wasn't the case for this. There was nowhere this year that we needed it for my start date. The people who started earlier did. That's the thing. All this gear, not all this gear, but especially like the snow gear is really going to be dependent on what time of year you're starting. So, how much snow is going to be on the trail when you get to the snowy pivotal parts of the trail. You just don't, there's no way to know. You don't know the weather. Well, you might know the weather year in terms of how much, what the snowpack looks like and stuff like that, but you don't know what the temperatures are going to be. You don't know what the temperatures have done to the snowpack. There's no way to know. And then, you don't know your start date until potentially, January, February. So it's just hard to know. You just have to play it by ear. And I think that's a rule that I learned in general on my Thru-Hike. I really wanted to have everything planned beforehand, before I left. I wanted to know how everything was going to work, and that's impossible. You can do as much research as you can do, but at the end of the day, you also, despite how much planning you may or may not have done, you still have to go with the flow. You cannot anticipate everything that's going to happen. You are going to be thrown curveballs, and most things you can figure out on the trail. If you need gear, you can order gear and have it shipped to your next stop. Like, there's a lot of options. So don't feel the stress of having to have everything figured out before you hit the trail. You don't. Okay, and now for my tips for avoiding gear regrets. I've got 4 of them, and they're pretty straightforward and obvious. But first and foremost, test your gear before you leave. I didn't follow that advice, but you should. Absolutely. There's no reason to learn that things aren't going to work or aren't going to work the way you wanted them to once you're on the trail. Figure that out in advance. Number 2, prioritize multi-use items and very durable items. I wish I would have known about that Z-Packs ground sheet poncho and how it could have killed so many birds with one stone. I figured it out, but I wish I would have known from the get-go. And second is, the second part of that is durability. Investing in higher quality gear when you can is going to make a big difference. It's going to last longer. Next, I just said this, but stay flexible. Your gear needs are going to evolve. Once you get more experience, your gear needs will be different. Depending on the weather, your gear needs are going to be different. Depending on the start date that you get, your gear needs are going to be different. And you're going to learn things on the trail and want to acquire new gear and want to get rid of gear, and stay flexible. Again, you can't have everything figured out in advance. So learn what you can, but be ready to adjust on the fly. And lastly, keep your load light, but practical. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So while I would encourage everyone to go as lightweight as possible, you also need to stay comfortable for 5 months. This is a long time to be living in the woods, to be roughing it, and it's an incredible, magical, epic experience. But there are a few luxuries that might be worth bringing along, and that's something that only you can figure out. But don't feel pressure to be extra uncomfortable just in the sake of being lightweight, unless that reduced weight has a huge impact. I don't know. Just people freak out about going ultralight, and I go ultralight, but I also carry some silly, naughty things like an iPad. Okay, y'all, thanks for watching yet another video. Let me know in the comments. I want to know, what is the one piece of gear that you regret bringing on your last Thru-Hiker backpacking trip? And don't forget to check the video description for links to my entire gear list loadout from the PCT, as well as links to all of my available group trips. If you've been thinking, oh, I want to go on an awesome vacation somewhere, but I don't have anyone to go with, come with us. I host trips all over the world. They almost always have a nature or adventure slant, and we have a real good time. So the link to those is in the description as well. See you next time. Bye, y'all. Want to watch another video? Click here. Want to learn more about my upcoming trips? Click here. Want to subscribe and like all my videos and turn those bell notifications on?